Good evening. Welcome to tonight's Effingham County Chamber of Commerce City Council and Mayoral Forum. We've got a great evening planned tonight, a long time. We've got a lot of candidates, a lot of questions to go through. We'll get through a few thank yous first. Thank you to the Chamber Legislative Committee for putting this on. We appreciate all their work, Norma, Becky, Amanda at the Chamber. Thank you for everything you do. And thank you to our co-sponsors. We've got Premier Broadcasting, Effingham Daily News, Effingham Topless News Report, and the Cromwell Radio Group. So thank you all for your sponsorship of this. The forum is being broadcast live on 97.9 XFM and is being videotaped and will be available on 97.9 XFM. It's also going to be available on effinghamradio.com. It's being televised this evening on 100.5 FM and 99.5 WCRA. I'll go through a few rules here, so to speak. Each candidate will be introduced by information they provided to the Chamber of Commerce. Each candidate will have questions posed from the media panel we have in front of us and myself. You'll have a minute to answer each question, and then we'll just start down with, once the questions start, we'll start with Don and work alphabetically down for the first question and just rotate through. You'll have 2 minutes to give a closing statement, and the order of those closing statements have been determined by the draw that you saw Norma and the candidates do just a few moments ago. We have a timekeeper this evening. Thank you, Becky Brown, for being our timekeeper. She will give a 30-second time as well as a 10-second time. And we spoke with the candidates and let them know that we're going to try to stick to our time frame so that we can get as many questions and give you all a chance to let everyone in the crowd and let all those listeners who are listening to us live on the radio hear what the candidates have to offer and hear what they can bring to the city of Effingham. Introduce our media panel. To my right is Greg Sapp, station manager from Premier Broadcasting. To Greg's right is Jeff Long, the editor of the Effingham Daily News. And to Jeff's right is Tom Jameson, the news director from Cromwell Radio Group. And to his right is Herb Meeker, the reporter with the Effingham and Topless News Report. So thank you all for helping us out this evening, serving as our media panel. I'll go ahead and do a brief introduction of all the candidates. And again, this is information that was provided to the Chamber by the candidates. To my far right, Don Altoff. Don is married to Carol. They have 2 children and 4 grandchildren. He is retired and the former owner of Quiznos Restaurant in Effingham. Previous employment includes the Ramada Inn, World Color Press, and Forbes magazine. Don is a current city council member. He has served 9 years on Effingham County Board. He's a graduate of St. Anthony High School and the Culinary Institute of America. Next to Don is Kevin Esker. Kevin is married to Kelly. They have 1 daughter. He's a 27-year employee of Quad Graphics, a member of the Effingham Knights of Columbus, Ducks Unlimited, and St. Anthony Church. Seated next to Kevin is Merv Gillenwater. Merv is married to Patricia. They have 1 son and 2 grandsons. He's the current mayor of Effingham, has served as a city commissioner from 2007 through 2011. Merv is a retired Illinois State Police lieutenant with nearly 25 years of service. He's an adjunct instructor for Lakeland College for 9 years, a life member of the Fraternal Order of Police, Illinois State Police Command Officers Association, and Retired Officers Association. He's a member of the American Legion, Centenary United Methodist Church, and is a volunteer with Illinois Special Olympics and Meals on Wheels. Seated next to Merv is Tim Custer. Tim is single and the son of Cleet and Betty Custer. Tim has 1 daughter and is the owner and operator of Custom House Trimming for 17 years. Tim was an independent candidate for Douglas Township Road Commissioner in 2013, and he is a member of Effingham Knights of Columbus and St. Anthony Church. To my immediate left is Brian Melville. Brian is single, the son of Larry and Pat Melville. He's a current city council member, the general manager of 2 hotels in Mattoon, Illinois. He's a co-owner of Take 5 Vintage in Effingham. He's a graduate of Effingham High School and Eastern Illinois University. He's a member of the governing board of construction trades for Effingham County and St. John's Lutheran Church. Seated next to Brian is Dustin Reardon. Dustin is married to Mindy. They have 2 sons. He's employed by Effingham County Sheriff's Department since 1998, a graduate of Lakeland College, and Mid-America Christian University. He's a member of the First Church of God, and his volunteer involvement includes heart cancer awareness programs and events. Seated next to Dustin is Michael Williamson. Michael is single, and he has one son. He's a professor of civil engineering at Indiana State University and serves on the college advisory and scholarship committees. Michael is a member of the American Society of Civil Engineers faculty advisor and a program coordinator for civil engineering at the college. He's active in Masonic organizations and has led fundraisers for children's organizations, as well as assisting with child identification programs and scholastic bowl competitions. Seated next to Michael is Kevin Willis. Kevin is married to Delana. They have 3 children and 7 grandchildren. He's employed as a security director at J&J Ventures and a retired Effingham City police officer after 21 years. He's a co-owner of Willis Detective Services and four fitness centers. He's a licensed private detective and security contractor. Kevin is also a member of the Effingham Country Club. Wow. Thank you all for agreeing to serve in the capacity or run for the Commissioner's office. And thank you all for being here this evening. Got a lot of great questions. So without further ado, just a reminder, we will start with Don. Each question will get 1 minute. I would ask the audience to hold any applause until the end of the proceedings so that we can get as many questions in as possible. So I will start with the first question, and then we'll, after I do my question, we'll work our way through the media panel, and we'll just keep circling through. So Don, this first question starts with you. Why are you seeking election to the Effingham City Council?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. And another thing, last time I ran, I went door to door and talked to everybody, and I didn't have that opportunity. I had surgery done, and I'd really rather done that than having surgery. And I enjoyed going out and talking to all the public and being connected with everybody. Why I'm running for City Council, I think the last 4 years proves that we've done a very good job, and we have a balanced budget. And I really care about the community, and we started a construction training class, and I want to see it fulfilled if at all possible, and just to serve the people. I really enjoy doing that. Thank you.
Kevin?
I've never really ran for anything like this before, but I've been interested in it, so I wanted to get myself more involved in more in the community and see what I could bring to the table with all my experience in customer service and being able to make good decisions. That's about it.
Thank you, Kevin. Bert?
I've spent the majority of my life in some type of public service one way or another. As you all know, I did serve for 4 years as a commissioner and enjoyed that position and enjoyed the people that I worked with and for. I also now have 4 years almost under my belt as the mayor. I have enjoyed that, and it's been very challenging but also very fulfilling. Some people might say, why are you stepping down? I don't feel that I am stepping down, even though I'm very proud of being mayor. I feel that this is just a change in position, and I want to continue to serve all of you as I have the last 8 years.
Thank you, Bert. Tim?
Hi, this is Tim Custer. I want to run for city commissioner, just kind of want to get involved more in the community. I want to help those that are more interested in the city, see what's going on in the city, and that's pretty much it, I guess.
Thank you, Tim. And we'll move over to Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian Melville, and I wanted to be an
Let's
advocate.
stop for just a moment and make sure we get a microphone on Brian. We want everybody to hear it. There we go. Let's see if we got you.
Hi. My name is Brian Melville, and I've always viewed myself as a advocate for the taxpayers. To go after limited government spending, thereby it's all right. Let's try that again. I'm Brian Millville, and I've always been an advocate for the taxpayer to control the limited, to do limited spending with government, to fight the tax increases that we face with runaway government spending, and at the end, to grow Effingham into a better place for ourselves and for our children.
Thank you, Brian. And Dustin?
I agree a lot with what Brian had to say. I have a commitment of service to the community. I feel that government has begun to spend beyond its means. I kind of want to keep that in check. I also feel the need to be involved in the capacity that I am seeking of City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Dustin. Michael?
Hi, I'm Michael Williamson. The reason I'm seeking election is I want to give back to the Effingham community by providing a service on the City Council. I've got 3 big points I'm really running on. One, I want to stop or prevent wasteful spending in the Effingham community, stop government runaway with our funds and increases of taxes. I also want to provide the necessary resources to make Effingham a safer community to live in for our children. And I want to promote economic growth. I have a lot of friends who have obtained a bachelor's degree. They want to come back to Effingham, but they can't find a job here, so they have to move away, or if they do stay, they take a job that they're overqualified for and underpaid. So those are the reasons that I'm wanting to run.
Thank you, Michael. And Kevin?
Hi, I'm Kevin Willis. Basically wanted to run for city council because I've been an employee for the city for 21 years. I'd like to see the other side of it. Obviously, when you're an employee, what you thought of the city council is not always the best on certain situations. So, having that said, I'd like to see the other side of it. I believe I have the experience with budgeting, owning 4 fitness centers and some other businesses. So be responsible with the spending as far as the government goes. And again, just to continue the service. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Microphone back down here. You guys good with the microphone? Okay. Very good. Thank you all for your introductions, and we appreciate that. This time, I'll turn the first question over to Herb Meeker from the Effingham Topless News Report.
The question I have is on planning and zoning. Over the past year, zoning issues became a source of friction between the Plan Commission and the City Council. Do you believe the current zoning process is effective for Effingham, or does it need a makeover? If you feel it needs a makeover, what specific changes would you recommend?
With not really ever being on the board, I'm not sure if I can answer that question to anybody's fulfillment, but I know there's a fine line between there'd be a tough line to toe between the commission and the planning board, and then also the citizens that would be involved in the rezoning of it. You would have to, weigh all the odds in order to come out with the best way for the zoning to be done.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll move to Murph.
I really don't have enough time in 1 minute to tell you how well the Plan Commission actually works if we use it the way it is intended. It is actually set up to be the finder of fact and law. We actually use the Plan Commission to determine whether the petitioner should get a zoning that they're asking for. We expect them to know the law specifically, and that's what they usually try to deal with. And then they make a recommendation to the City Council, which we can approve, or we can deny, or we can just send it back to them, remand it back to them and ask them to get some clarification on it. But I think it works very well. Maybe sometimes we don't use it the way we should, but I think it's a good process.
Thank you, Murph. Our next respondent will be Tim Custer.
Could you
you repeat the question? Over the past year, zoning issues became a source of friction between the Plan Commission and City Council. Do you believe the current zoning process is effective for Effingham, or does it need a makeover? If you feel it needs a makeover, what specific changes would you recommend?
Mine is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. No need to spend any foolish money if it's not gonna help the matter. If the city zoning is working the way it is, I say just leave it alone. No need in change anything if it's working good.
Thank you, Tim. Our next respondent will be Brian Nobel.
I'm not so much sure that there is so much friction between the city council and the planning commission as it is that they're volunteers and they do a great job at what they do, and the city council should take their recommendation under consideration, but should not be a rubber stamp for anything they pass. We do need to have planned growth. We need to have proper growth. We need to listen to the residents of the neighborhoods that the zoning changes affect. I live in a neighborhood where zoning changes years ago have drastically changed the makeup of the neighborhood from single family to, I've had drug dealers living across the street from me. And part of it was due to the zoning that was done prior to this council or even the previous council. So the planning commission does a good job, and we just need to make sure it's the proper growth, the right growth, and the right zoning.
Thank you, Brian. Our next respondent will be Dustin Reardon.
Well, I'm unsure, not being in office, what needs to be changed with the zoning and planning commission. If we're talking about rezoning a neighborhood, that certainly affects the neighbors. And I would take into great consideration what that effect would have on the neighbors living in that area. If we're talking about TIF district, the Northwest TIF district that just came up, I'm in favor of that. That benefits the merchant, it benefits the consumer. So the TIF district, adding that would be a great benefit to Effingham.
Thank you, Dustin. And our next respondent will be Michael Williamson.
Well, from the outside looking in, I think it's a pretty good process for now. So they're getting volunteers to give some input on if zoning should be changed in the city in different areas or not. I also live in an area where they've changed to multifamily home, and we're able to put in some duplex apartments that we've had some kind of shady people living in. So I know there was a project they were looking at down by Hinglemire Park recently that was shot down by the city council and zoning. I believe they decided against that as well. So I think it's a pretty good system. They can get the input of the citizens at those zoning meetings and then take recommendations on to the city council, and it sounds like they've been making pretty good decisions so far.
Thank you, Michael. Our next respondent will be Kevin Willis.
Michael kind of stole what I was going to talk about. My only experience with them was just recently when we had a developer wanted to develop some property down in the south end of town. And I'll tell you, they did a really good job of listening to the residents that showed up at the meetings, listened to everything that they had to say. It was about a 2-hour meeting. Went there twice, listened to it again, and actually the city council took the recommendations. So looking from the outside in, the planning commission or the planning board, as I see it, is doing its job. I think it's the council to take the recommendation and do their own investigation and make a decision from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And rounding out this question, Don Altoff will be our next respondent.
Thank you. This planning commission, I think, does a very good job of researching what's going on and stuff, and talking to the people who are the projects that are going on. The only one conflict I think we had this year was with on South End to keep a business or starting a business in Austin Mansion, and my biggest concern there was, yeah, it's going to infect the neighborhood, but she was had it very well planned. And it was a good business, and to keep the Austin Mansion thriving, and and not just let it go back into apartments or even be tore down. I think it's good for the community to look at other things and just, I think the planning commission and the city work very well together.
Thank you, Don. And that rounds out our second question. And this third question will come from Tom Jameson, the news director at Cromwell Radio Group. And leading off the answer for this round will be Merv Gillenwater. Apologies for the sound.
Well, we learned a little bit about all you guys during your introductions, but take these personal and professional experiences and qualifications that you have, and how do those make you a good candidate to be a city commissioner?
Okay, my background, actually, I didn't talk a lot about my education. I do have a bachelor's degree in management from Eastern. Having served in my primary role as an investigator with the Illinois State Police, I did spend several years in the management positions of patrol commander, investigations commander. At one point, over 31 counties. I've had as many as 55 people working for me. I have worked with budgets. I've applied for grants. Of course, now with my experience on the, both with as a commissioner and the mayor, I think that that has provided me with more the experience I need to do this job well.
Thank you, Merv. Our next respondent will be Tim Custer.
As a business owner in the past 17 years, I've been able to keep a balanced budget, and I've been able to keep all of my customers satisfied by having my jobs well done and done on time. And I enjoy working with the public and like to see things, a little bit of change here and there, and help the community grow.
Thank you, Tim. Our next respondent will be Brian Melville.
I think I'm qualified for the job. I spent a good 10 years going to city council meetings long before I decided to run for office. I think we've done a good job while we've been in office. I'm the general manager of two motels where I have to deal with P&L statements, budgets, just like the city does. I'm a business owner, so I know we have to live within our means. As a private individual, I know we have to live within our means. I spent almost my entire life outside of serving on the city council in the private sector, and I think I can help the city move forward in the future.
Thank you, Brian. And our next respondent will be Dustin Reardon.
As a deputy sheriff, I deal with a lot of complaints, problems, neighbor disputes, things of that sort. And I think over the years I've developed a knack for solving problems between people. And I think that's a good beneficiary to bring to the table as far as on the city council.
Thank you, Dustin. And our next respondent will be Michael Williamson.
From an educational standpoint, I have all the way up to a PhD in civil engineering, and with that, I'm a professor at Indiana State University. There I serve on a multitude of different committees. I'm constantly in meetings that'll be similar to the city council. We're making decisions that are going to impact the students and the university and their ability to go out and get jobs once they've graduated. I'm also an adjunct professor at SIUE over at Edwardsville. Some of my experiences, I've worked on several research projects at SIUE while I was working on my PhD, and one of those was a highway incident management training course that was developed over a 4-year period. I interacted with all levels of government, from federal, state, and local communities such as Effingham, and with all different types of responders, law enforcement, EMS, fire and rescue, towing and recovery, as well as local politicians at state and federal, et cetera, levels. So I've got a lot of experience dealing with a lot of people and coming to a solution that was good for all of them at once.
Thank you, Michael. And our next respondent will be Kevin Willis.
Being the owner of 4 businesses, 4 fitness centers, the budget, dealing with the budget, been an investigator for Effingham for over 10 years. I was a patrol commander for Effingham for over 10 years. My current position as security director for J&J, I've been writing policy we're currently in a process of dealing with the state of Illinois, getting security guards armed with them. So, with that all being said, I think I have experience to do the job.
Thank you, Kevin. Our next respondent will be Don Altoff.
With my experience with being on the county board, I had 34 years of volunteer firefighting for the city and seeing really how the city worked in that aspect. And then I was president of the country club for 2 years and working for Ford Magazine as a publisher, rep out of World Color for 19 years. And we owned a popcorn shop downtown, and I owned Quiznos, and I ran Ramada and Best Western and PG's Pancake House. So I think I've got plenty of business experience. And the last 4 years, we've had a very good time on the council and had a good budget, balanced budget. And the construction trade classes we started is a very vital thing to the community. We're going to have 21 kids, and we should hopefully graduate 21 kids into the business industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And our next respondent will be Kevin Esker.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, kind of just based on your personal and professional experiences, what does that give you as far as making you a good candidate for city commissioner?
Well, I graduated from Eastern Illinois University with a degree in finance. I'm in a very tough industry of printing, which is getting tougher all the time with the internet. And I do help sales and negotiate contracts to try to find the best way to run work and still be able to make a profit in the tough industry. And I think that could also be reflected on into the city work as well as a city council member. I guess that's about it.
Thank you, Kevin. That concludes that round of question. And this next question, the first respondent will be Tim Custer. And this question will come from Jeff Long, the editor of the Effingham Daily News. Jeff?
Hello. Governor Rauner has proposed cutting in half the amount of state income tax that local governments get. First of all, do you support that plan by the governor as he deals with the state's financial problems? And if it does go through at some point in the future, how specifically would you deal with that loss to the city?
I'm kind of border on it. I'm yes and no on it. Some of the cuts, I don't agree on the cutback for the Medicare for the elder people. I want to cut that, and I see his point of trying to cut back to save money and stuff, but there's a leeway in there where you need to give and take a little bit. I think it needs a little bit more thought and put into, and I guess that's about all I got to say on that.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Our next respondent will be Brian Melville.
Runner's cuts would be about a $600,000 hit to our general budget. It's not as bad as the 100% cut that Quinn proposed back in 2011, but it's still going to hurt if it goes through. I appreciate the governor for trying to fix Illinois' problems. God knows there's plenty of them. But it seems like it's almost a punishment to Effingham for being fiscally responsible, and yet we're going to be punished for the bad deeds in Springfield. What's going to happen is I refuse to raise taxes if there's a budget cut. It's just not an option to me. What will end up happening is there will be less projects in the city. We're going to have to make the cuts and make do as we do. So we'll have to make the adjustments as we go along and hope they don't hit us that hard, but there will be something coming down the pipe that they'll hit us.
Thank you, Brian. Our next respondent will be Dustin Reardon.
I think sometimes people don't realize how local government and state government intertwine so closely. With these cuts from Governor Rauner, it could impact the city. as Brian said, 600,000 loss to the city is a good loss. I think there are some areas that we can make cuts to adjust, and, you know, we don't really have much of a choice. If it goes through, it goes through. So if that being the case, I think there's areas looking at the budget that could be cut to make up that ground.
Thank you, Dustin. Our next respondent will be Michael Williamson.
Can you repeat the question again, just so I get it fresh in my mind?
Governor Rauner has suggested cutting in half the amount of state income tax that local governments get. So I'm wondering if you support that move by the governor, and if it does go through at some point, what specifically would you look at cutting back on in Effingham to make it work?
Okay, well, I was at the budget meeting last week, so that did come up. There's about $600,000 in cuts. My understanding is that's going to be to the general fund, so where employee salaries are at, and pensions and those sorts of things. Basically, what I would suggest is that we need to be fiscally responsible in the state. You know, Illinois kind of had a history of running away with spending. So if we're making cutbacks to be responsible, I understand that. We just have to work with the budget we have, which may mean having less projects, so less growth in the city for now, until we can figure out a way to increase some type of revenue. I'm not for tax increases, though. I don't think we should raise local taxes to make up for the loss. So we'll figure out where to make cuts. It's one of those things, again, I'm on the outside looking in, but I would say that I'm not going to cut any vital services such as law enforcement or fire services. So I want to keep all those going and figure out other ways to make cuts.
Thank you, Michael. Our next respondent will be Kevin Willis.
The state of Illinois, unfortunately, is not in very good shape. Money, I understand the governor's wanting to cut money out of the local government. With that being said, you know, the board would have, you know, we need to work together. If we need to cut $600,000, that's a lot of money out of the general fund. You know, hopefully we can look at areas that is not affecting employees with the city. You know, take a look at the areas where economic development may be pushed back half a year or 2 years, whatever the case may be. But it all comes down to we got to be financially responsible and make the tough decisions to get it done.
Thank you, Kevin. And our next respondent will be Don Altoff.
I think the governor has to do a lot of cutting, and this isn't the first one that's going to come down the line, I don't think. But most of this would be projects and stuff what we'd have to eliminate, and it wouldn't be employment or anything like that. But if it kept going, yes, we'd probably have to look at cutting employment back. But I don't see any, it's mostly would be projects the first year or two. But we've, you know, got a lot of projects on the books, and we don't start every project we have. So, you know, there's a lot of carryover and stuff that we don't complete all the time as the projects, and we move them on to another year. So there's a lot of opportunity we can move stuff around. So, and the budget's been very healthy for us. So, thank you.
Thank you, Don. Our next respondent will be Kevin Esther.
State cuts, I understand that they're probably going to happen just because of the way the state of Illinois is, but when it comes down to meeting a budget or taking on a cut of, say, $600,000, the first thing you need to do is sit down and look at your fixed costs, your variable costs, and see what is out there that may be fluff that you may not be needing. You also need to sit down and decide what are your needs and what are your wants. That's two different things. I mean, you got to sit down and evaluate the right way to go about it.
Thank you, Kevin. Our next respondent will be Merv Gillenwater.
Along with everyone here, I don't like the idea that they're proposing. The problem is that what they're doing is they're pushing their problem down to the local level. To me, it is a state problem. It should be handled at the state level. If cuts need to be made, make them there. Or if they're going to be taxes are going to have to be raised, raise them at the state level. we're very lucky here in Effingham. We have been very fiscally conservative. We do have some funds that will help us ride this out. However, it's not fair for other communities that do not have the money we do. They may end up having to raise taxes at the local level. And that, again, that's not a fair thing to do. And actually, it's not going to be projects that we're going to be having to cut. It probably will be personnel, or we won't be able to buy equipment that is necessary to provide you with the safety and security that you now have.
Thank you, Merv. And that concludes the fourth question of the evening. And our first respondent for the next question will be Brian Millville, and the question will come from Greg Sapp, Station Manager at Premier Broadcasting Company.
Thank you, Eric. Effingham's operating with a city administrator. He oversees the day-to-day operation of the city. Is that a system you favor? And if not, what's your idea?
Brian?
I was originally in favor of the city manager referendum that was about 5 years ago. Was opposed to the city council, the previous city council creating the city administration position. Having dealt with Mr. Arndt for the last 4 years, I think I'll be the first one to grow. It's worked out good. Jim has done a fantastic job for the city. He lets us know what's going on. He does a great job with the budget. He does a great job with the personnel. And, it took a little bit of, we're the kind of the first council that's had to deal with that form of government. So it's taken a good 2.5, 3 years to get into that feel of how things work between city administration and us. But I think it's been an overall positive experience.
Thank you, Brian. Our next respondent is Dustin Reardon.
Well, initially, I was against it just simply because the majority of the people voted against that position. I think it was 57% voted down the city managerial form of government. So if I take office, that is one position I would have to take a long, hard look at and reevaluate our needs, and if we need that, if we continue with it. I'm kind of on the fence with that.
Thank you, Dustin. Our next respondent will be Michael Williamson.
I like the current form of government we have. I think it's important to have a mayor and city council members to give public input and make decisions based on what the public wants through communication with those commissioners. That being said, I think Jim Arndt from the city council meetings I've attended, I think he does a really good job of managing the city overall. He kind of keeps things going, keeping it growing, keep economic development coming in. I think he works pretty hard at that. So I think he's paying for his position and being there, and if we were to just get rid of him, I think we would see a loss.
Thank you, Michael. Our next respondent, Kevin Willis.
I think it's a position that we need. It would be hard for the mayor and the council to do what needs to be done to run the city on a volunteer basis, or not a volunteer, but part-time basis, being that we all have other jobs. I think that Jim has done a good job. I was on the board at the Effingham Country Club, and it would have been real hard for a board member to do what department heads do. And that's bring the information back to the council and let the council make their decisions off of that. So, yes, I think it's a good idea.
Thank you, Kevin. And our next respondent will be Don Altoff.
I think our form of government works very well. I think Jim does a very good job in informing the council what's going on and keep us very well informed. And he keeps working with all the city employees real well on a daily basis. And we have very little problems with, and everything's moving real well. We took the sewer department and the street department, the water department, and everybody works. If we have a problem, everybody jumps in on the problem. And that's changed from the individual, each council member had their own little department before, and this really works well. We've cut 22 positions out, I think 8 years ago, and the city's really worked very well since then, so I'm very proud of what's going on.
Thank you, Don. Our next respondent will be Kevin Esker.
without ever being on the council before, but I've been to several meetings, and the only information that I could come from is from my experience at the meetings, as well as I've talked to several city employees, and they all say that Jim does a good job, and that it is a good position, and it should more or less stay that way. So I agree with it.
Thank you, Kevin. Our next respondent will be Mert Gillenwater.
I was on the council that made the decision to hire a city administrator. By the way, we voted against having a city manager, not a city administrator, so I want to clarify that. I actually also was the only person that did not vote to hire Jim, and I will be the first person to acknowledge the fact I was absolutely wrong. He has been an excellent asset to this city. He brings in a professionalism that we need. He brings in a consistency. Like right now, we're going to be changing mayors. It's really not going to affect the city as much as it did in the past. He also, now we have continuity of the different departments, where when we had each department responsible to one commissioner, sometimes they weren't treated equally. So I can't say enough about our system and our administrator.
Thank you, Mert. Our next respondent will be Tim Custer.
I agree. I think we need someone like Jim on to take care of stuff and inform everyone and keep everything going. I think he does a good job keeping everything going. I think it'd be harder on Effingham if we didn't have someone like that. I think we'd be in a mess. So I think as far as it goes, I'd say yes, keep him on.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. And that concludes that round of questioning. And our first respondent for the next question will be Dustin Reardon. And I will bring you this question. Governor Rauner has proposed right-to-work zones, which would give local voters the power to decide if workers should be required to pay association dues or join a union. These rights would apply to county, municipality, school district, or other units of local government. If this issue came before the city council, how would you respond? Dustin?
I would agree with Governor Rauner on the issue of right-to-work zones. I wouldn't have any problem if that was presented to us and brought into the city level.
Thank you, Dustin. Michael Williamson?
I would also be in favor of what Governor Rauner proposed as far as putting in the right-to-work zones. I know people, not only in Effingham area, but in other states, the city of St. Louis, where I worked for a while as a traffic engineer, who had that choice. Some of them chose to be a part of the union. If they wanted to be, they could, but the ones who didn't have to pay in those dues. I will say that on projects that I've been around in transportation engineering, if it's union ran, then it usually increases the cost by about 30%. So if you're looking at a multi-million-dollar project, you're looking at a much higher cost to the city. So having a right-to-work zone around, I think, would make things more fair and would keep people from having to pay into a union if they don't want to.
Thank you, Michael. Our next respondent will be Kevin Willis.
Being a union member for most of my adult life with Rural Color first, and then with the city police department, I kind of understand, where units are coming from, the safety issue and the things, the higher pay, all that stuff is good, I believe. The Right to Work, I think, is a good organization, or a good way of doing things. Again, like Mike said, you get the opportunity to either join it or not. The only downfall I do see is the cost of some projects is going to be higher because of that. But again, it's the Right to Work, and I think it's a good thing.
Thank you, Kevin. And our next respondent will be Don Altoff.
Man down. I think right to work would be a great thing. I think the state needs to move forward, and we need to keep more jobs here locally and help the construction business have a better bidding process on the projects and stuff. And I just think it's a great thing. It's a good step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Next respondent will be Kevin Esker.
In my opinion, right to work or union, either way, as long as they're competitive. I mean, there's a lot of, the way to do it is to, try to get the best deal, and if, employees have their choice of what they want to do, then, that's the way it should be.
Thank you, Kevin. And our next respondent will be Murph Gillenwater.
This is another one of those issues that I believe would be best answered at the state level. Governor Rauner has talked about how Illinois is not competitive with other states. I agree. The problem is if we have right-to-work zones, Mattoon could vote to have one. The citizens of Effingham could vote not to. Therefore, we would be, when we're trying to compete to get businesses in, we would be at an unfair advantage. So I think, again, this should be done at the state level so that it makes it more fair throughout the state and not let one community decide. And I'm usually for communities being able to decide things for themselves, but this is one of those that I think would make it actually tougher for some communities.
Thank you, Murph. And our next respondent will be Tim Custer.
I agree a lot with Merv. I believe it should be held up to the state because there is going to be too much competition between towns. I think it's just going to cause confusion and cause a lot of mayhem. I think just let the state take care of it and let them deal with matters like that. I think if we leave the city, it's just going to be more hectic, and I mean, I want to work out there, but I think it's best just leave it for the state.
Thank you, Tim. And our final respondent on that question will be Brian Milton.
Right-to-work zones is a kind of novel idea by Governor Rauner. I think union membership should be should be a choice, not necessarily a requirement. It should be based on the desires of the workforce at hand. I think Governor Rauner needs to take a step forward even more and eliminate the executive order by Governor Quinn that requires project labor agreements in several of our economic development zones, which ends up raising the cost of our projects at the city level anywhere from 15 to 40%. If we can do that, we can save some of that money that he wants to cut from us as well. But I think in the end, the current system is unsustainable. We've seen businesses move from Illinois to other states that were right to work and have prospered and left Illinois in the dust.
Thank you, Brian. And that concludes that round of questioning. Thank you all for your responses. This next question will come from Mr. Meeker. Herb?
How will you balance your decision on any issue before the city council between conflicting constituent concerns?
Our first respondent to that question will be Michael Williamson.
Well, I, of course, want to consider the input from all parties involved. If we're talking about, say, a corporation in the city and maybe state level or city level issues, I want to take a look at what the local policies are, or any laws that would be affecting that, how it can benefit the community and the citizens, and then I'd also want to take into consideration citizen input or any employees, anybody that may be involved and affected by whatever decision was being made.
Thank you, Michael. Our next respondent, Kevin Willis.
I'm sorry, Herb, can you repeat it, please?
How will you balance your decision on any issue before the city council between conflicting constituent concerns?
I believe you gotta educate yourself on what the issue is. If you don't know, ask somebody that is well versed in whatever issue it may be. I think you gotta take the good with the bad. Sometimes you have to make decisions that your constituents don't agree with. So that being said, I think, again, you just gotta educate yourself on the issue and make the best decision you can possibly make.
Thank you, Kevin. Our next respondent to this question will be Don Altoff.
I think you gotta weigh each situation and feel comfortable with it and talk to your constituents about what's going on. And if you have I try to see the long term of each project we're working on, what the long term effect of it is, and and one decision, I was gonna probably vote for one thing, and then I got a whole bunch of calls to change my vote, and I went with the voters, and I got criticized pretty heavily, and I just feel I made the right decision because they're the ones who put me in office. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Our next respondent, Kevin Esper.
Well, anytime that you have an issue between constituents or basically in any situation, you really need to gather as much information as you can. You have to ask the right questions, and you've got to get down to the bottom of it before you can really make any good decisions. One of the things that I would stress, even at my employment, is, never assume anything. Make sure you get all the information. That's the only way that you're going to get the best answer between conflicting information or confliction between people.
Thank you, Kevin. Our next respondent will be Murph Yellenwater.
This is something that I've done almost every council meeting we've ever had. There's always an issue. Some people say, well, you got that past that one, now you have the next one. It is very difficult. One thing that you cannot do is try to always figure out what the majority wants. Because there's always a group that's more vocal than the other, but that may not be the majority. So you really have to look at the specific issue that's at question. You have to apply law sometimes to it, and we're elected to represent the citizens to the best of our ability, and sometimes it's not very good. But I think that sometimes we have to make those tough decisions and try to do the right thing for the right reason.
Thank you, Murph. Next respondent, Tim Custer.
I agree with a lot of people who said before. Get as most information you can from it and talk to the people that's involved in it. Try to hear from both sides and weigh it out. See what's going to be the best interest for everyone. How everything's going to affect society, and see how everything's going to, which way is going to be the best way for you to vote it out.
Thank you, Tim. Next respondent, Brian Melville.
I think first you have to research the issue. Of course, you need to know both sides of the argument and make a decision from there. I think an example of going against the grain in a sort of way, was the Austin Mansion. I went against my neighbors. My neighbors were opposed to the Austin Mansion being used by a local business, and I weighed the options, and ultimately you got to decide what's best for Effingham. That's what we're elected to do. And a majority of us felt that the use of the Austin Mansion in that manner was the best for Effingham, and we voted to go that direction.
Thank you, Brian. Our next respondent will be Dustin Reardon.
I feel you've got to find a way to see what the majority wants. That's what we're elected for, that's what we're elected to do. I would make myself personally accessible via email, personal cell phone, and I believe, like Murph said, that maybe one side's more vocal than the other. So you have to look at the individual issue, and ultimately the decision will be left up to the board. But you've got to stick with what the majority wants.
Thank you, Dustin. And that concludes that round of questioning. And our next question will be led, the first respondent will be Kevin Willis, and that question is coming to us from Tom Jameson.
Taking a look at the city's infrastructure, what are the pressing needs in this area, and what are some improvements we can make, and how do you address this?
Infrastructure, I think one of the biggest battles we have right now as far as industry wanting to come in is water. That's what I heard, that's what I understand. Of course, all infrastructure, the roads, the sewer, everything to get, infrastructure to I think we're talking about industry here, some kind of business, factory, whatever. Good question about how do we do it. I think that you, again, like we spoke a while ago, that you have to get people in to educate you on procedures or ways to get water either by buying it or creating another reserve someplace. I believe that's, what we have to do for infrastructure,
Thank you, Kevin. Our next respondent will be Don Altoff.
Infrastructure. Oh, there we go. Take a look at the city's infrastructure. What are some areas of improvement we could have, and what is your thoughts on making those improvements?
What areas?
As far as infrastructure, yeah, what are some changes we could make?
Well, infrastructure, we've been really working hard on infrastructure the last 3 years. I think we spent $3 or $4 million in putting sewer, water lines, relining sewers, and I think we got about maybe 1/3 or a little more of the city done with the lining of the sewers, but we got a lot of it televised. And that's a very important thing, but in the last 12 years, yeah, you can build overpasses and everything else, but if you don't keep your infrastructure going, your city falls apart. The water department is very vital. We are going to do about a $3 million project, I think, out there to put new machines in to make it work better, and we have better water. Our water source is very good. We got Lake Sarah and Lake Shelbyville and river. We pull out of the river until the lake, and then we got to go to the lake, and then we go to Lake Shelbyville. But we spent $8 million in trying to get more water back like 10 years ago with Lake Shelbyville, so it's working very well.
Thank you, Don. Our next respondent will be Kevin Esker.
One more time, could you repeat that?
Take a look at the city's infrastructure. What are some areas we can improve here, the city's most pressing needs, and how do you think these can be addressed?
Well, I've already had a citizen call me about his road not being in very good shape, and he says it's partly because of the city and the contractor himself that put the road in. And I think that we probably should have held a contractor who put that road in a little more accountable to better standards, or inspected it properly before it was ever put in, because I have seen it and it is cracking up and everything else. But as far as the needs for the city and the infrastructure, I'm really not, don't have any information on that, so I really can't comment too much on that.
Thank you, Kevin. Our next respondent, Bert Gillenwater.
Kevin is correct in that one of the problems we have had in the past is that we did allow subdivisions to be built without having proper roads and infrastructure placed in properly. We have addressed that in this current council, and we now have ordinances in effect. We do not take over the land or the streets without making sure that they meet our standards. We're also very lucky in that our personnel are very competent. We have a public works director and a city engineer that spend a great deal of time investigating where we need to spend our money, our priorities. We have been taking care of our sewers the last several years. We are going to continue to spend a lot of money to make sure our sewers are up to where they should be. Our water is the best quality it's been because of the way we have been watching it and keeping priority on it. So I think we have to actually look at all the areas.
Thank you, Bert. Our next respondent, Tim Custer.
And several kind of the same. I think we need to keep the roads and the sidewalks up for the city and for the community. Also, the sewer system is a good plan to keep that going. And for health reasons, the water's a good idea to keep that safe drinking water. As far as everything else goes, for spending wise, I think it all ought to be for the best interest as far as what you're going to spend it on. Like maybe even invest in some more like city parks, more just the best interest for the town of Effingham. And that's about it.
Thank you, Tim. Our next respondent, Brian Millville.
I think this is a matter of budget prioritizing a lot of it. Effingham has a lot of older infrastructure, and we've done a good job trying to improve it. As it's been said, we've lined the sewers and tried to take care of some of the older ones that have started to fall apart. But it also, like I said, it takes budget prioritizing. We can't continue to spend money on long-term commitments, subsidizing projects that happen to be one of our favorites. We have to commit that money to improving the infrastructure because it ties directly to economic development. And that's under the city and above the city. So we need to reapply for the CTEP grant to try to get bike paths, to connect our parks together and make our community a better living community.
Thank you, Brian. Our next respondent, Dustin Reardon.
You know, infrastructure to me seems like something that goes overlooked. It's not a very hot topic, it doesn't seem. But I went around speaking to several of the employees of the city of Effingham, department heads, maintenance workers, street department, whoever I could find, I talked to them and asked them what they needed. And their overwhelming response was, we need manpower. We need manpower, we need equipment. It wasn't, we need a raise, we need more money. So the infrastructure and roads in Effingham definitely need a good, long, hard look, need repaired. And you don't think about that until you drive over that pothole.
Thank you, Dustin. And our final respondent to this question, and this is the last question of our candidates this evening, will be Michael Williamson.
Well, this falls into the area of civil engineering, so I could probably talk on this for a couple of months if you'd let me. We do have an aging sewer system. I know sewer system, and this is common in cities. You'll have areas that are over 100 years old. I understand they are making some repairs, but it's one of those things people don't see, so they don't want to put money into it until the street, falls in because it's broken down and decayed. As far as drinking water supply goes, I know we have an adequate supply. The problem is with the pipe sizes in certain areas. So when they build some of the industrial zones, if they don't put in a large enough pipe to supply what some of these businesses that will want to come to Effingham need, then they're not able to come in there. And that's fallen into some of the zoning issues that have come up in the city council meetings in the last year. As far as transportation improvements, I'd like to work on something. One is the Maple Street overpass. I'd like to try to secure some state funding for that to let it go through. I'd also like to see some improvements to some of the local roads, maybe get out there and do a little more maintenance and make sure they're in optimal condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And that concludes our questions from the media panel and myself. Thank you all for your responses. As I had said when we started, each candidate will have an opportunity for a 2-minute closing statement. And the order of this closing statement was determined by a random drawing we conducted at the beginning of the forum. And the first candidate to respond will be Dustin Reardon. You have 2 minutes to give a closing statement, and Becky will be giving you your time. Dustin?
I ask for your vote on April 7th because I'm committed to this community. I was born here, raised here, and I will be here until I die. This is my home. I want to see it grow. I want to see it prosper. I have children of my own. I want to leave them with a good town that I grew up in. I want to leave them with similar situation. I want to see Effingham grow and prosper, but it's got to be done carefully, and we've got to watch some of our spending. But the main thing is, I do want to see Effingham grow, and I am committed to it.
Thank you, Dustin. And our next closing statement will be made by Don Altoff. And just to give the candidates a heads up, Kevin Esker is on deck, and Michael Williamson will be in the hole. Don Altoff, you're up.
Thanks, Betsy. I appreciate the voters in the last 4 years to let me have the opportunity to serve you, and I hope you let me serve you in the next 4 years. Also, I think we've done a very fiscal thing in the last 4 years. First year on our first year, we refinanced the EPC, and we saved it, I think, and we saved 2 years of payments on it, and saved $750,000 there. We saved about $1.5 million by redoing bonds and issues and stuff, and So I think we've done a very good fiscal thing for the city and also the construction trade I keep hitting at, but that's very vital and to bring citizens and help people stay here in the community. And all this construction trade is all taught by local contractors and stuff, so it's all community driven. So, and I think we've done a very good job, and I've been a lifelong resident, and I really love the city of Effingham. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Our next respondent will be Kevin Esker with Michael Williamson on deck and Brian Melville in the hole. Kevin?
I've been a citizen of Effingham almost all my life, except for when I was originally born in St. Louis, Missouri. I graduated from Eastern Illinois with a degree in finance, customer service manager for 15 years at Quad Graphics, known now, or formerly Petty Company. I've been there 29 years. I plan on staying here. My parents, Frank and Betty Esker, moved back to Effingham from St. Louis in the late 60s with just to raise their children, their 5 children in Effingham. And I'm thankful that they did. I probably couldn't imagine growing up anywhere else. For this same reason, I did live in St. Louis for a short time after college, and I moved back to Effingham once I got engaged to my wife, Kelly. I think Effingham is a great community to raise a family, and I want to keep this tradition going. I think it also should be one of the main selling points for Effingham for attracting new business, as well as the growth of Effingham. I do have 30 years of experience in customer service. I'm a good listener. I'm not afraid to ask questions. One of the biggest mistakes you can make in negotiations or making decisions is to assume something. You've got to get down to the bottom of it. I encourage the citizens of Effingham to make a special effort to get out and vote for me next week. This is not a federal election. It's not a state election. It's an election to determine who's going to be making the decisions in Effingham, your city.
Thank you, Kevin. Our next respondent for the 2-minute closing statement will be from Michael Williamson with Brian Melville on deck and Tim Custer in the hole. Michael?
Okay, well, I appreciate everyone for coming out tonight, and of course, I'd appreciate your vote on April 7th, to put me in as a commissioner for the city of Effingham. I'd like to close by talking about some points that didn't come up, but I know have been kind of hot topics in the community over the last year or two. One of the first ones is medical marijuana. Just so everybody knows, I'd be against that. I think it would bring a bad element to town and possibly create kind of a black market for that drug within our community or increase the one that's already here. So I don't want to see that. I'm against it. I think most of the Christian-based voters out there are going to be against that as well. Another thing that hasn't come up this evening is the sports complex. Well, I think it's a good opportunity for the community. We're going to generate some more revenue by attracting people in here. We're going to be staying in hotels, shopping, eating in our restaurants. I also think that should be self-supported somehow. So it's going to have to be well managed from day one, be able to coordinate events and get, pay for itself. I don't think it should be on the taxpayers' back. I don't want to see taxes go up at the park district or through the city somehow and then get money to support the sports complex. In response again to the budget cuts, I'm not going to cut any vital services, and cutting employees would be kind of my last option. If I'm a commissioner, I think there's other places we'd be able to make the cuts. I think everybody in the city is doing a great job right now. So not cutting, we just need to spend less and not cut personnel. As far as the economy goes, I really like to focus on, and I do this at the university too, in placing students, finding optimal places for them to go, businesses to connect them with. So I think I'd be really good at attracting higher paying jobs for our skilled workers so they're not stuck making $10 an hour. They can have a decent life. And also attracting some jobs here for people who have educations that want to stay in the Effingham community. So if you go out and get a bachelor's or a master's degree, you have a job opportunity here and be able to stay, and that way we're not constantly losing our children when they grow up and go off to college. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Our next closing statement will be coming from Brian Melville with Tim Custer on deck and Kevin Willis in the hole. Brian?
I'd first like to thank the voters for being here tonight, and the voters listening at home, and thank you to the media and the chamber and everyone that helped organize this forum. I'm eternally grateful for the opportunity the voters have given me to serve them on the city council the last 4 years. I've tried my best to represent you and protect the taxpayers from the burdens government far too often passes on to them. My experience as a business owner and general manager of two hotels has provided me the skills to help manage a budget in the past, now, and hopefully in the future. I don't expect you to agree with every vote I've cast or every decision the city has made. I do know that through our efforts, the city is more open to public participation at the city council meetings. The city website is more transparent so that anyone can view the last 5 years of budgets, payrolls, or city capital improvement plans. And the city is investing in our future workforce by creating the construction trades of Effingham County. Furthermore, Effingham enjoys one of the lowest unemployment rates in the region. We have kept taxes at some of the lowest levels in the state. We've passed 4 consecutive balanced budgets, kept our debt to a minimum, and Effingham has become an example that other cities and businesses look to for positive and successful economic development. But there's more to be done in the future. We need to address our housing problems to prevent Effingham from becoming a donut hole city like Decatur. We need to continue to invest in our future workforce, and we need to remain diligent with the budget, considering our city's infrastructure needs and any other large projects or purchases in the near future. I'm asking for your support and your vote during the election on April 7th. I thank you for allowing me to serve you the last 4 years, and I hope you will allow me to serve you in the future. I'm Brian Millville, candidate for Effingham City Commissioner, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Brian. And our next closing statement will come from Tim Custer with Kevin Willis and Merv Gillenwater from the whole. Tim?
Tim Custer, I was born and raised in Effingham. I think Effingham is a great town to raise your kids in. It's a wonderful community. Everyone's supportive. I'm active in Casey Halls. I work at bingo, volunteer. I go to St. Anthony Church. I like to get more involved in the community, find out what's going on, keep things up. Like to see our roads kept up, keep more, if elected, keep office hours from 8 to 4, 8 to 5, and the door would always be open for concerns or if anybody needed, wanted any questions or anything, I'd be right there to answer them. Wraps things up for me.
Thank you, Tim. And I'll bring the mic down here to Kevin Willis. And Kevin will give us the 2-minute closing statement, and then Merv will finish up for us.
This will be short, so Merv's got more time. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming out. I promise to do my best to educate myself on every issue that the city has in front of it and do my best to make the best decision for Effingham. That being said, I appreciate your vote April 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. He yields the balance of his time to Merv.
All right.
Merv Gillenwater, 2 minutes.
First of all, I want to thank the Chamber and the news media for sponsoring this event tonight. And I want to thank all of you for taking your time to come out and listen to what we have to say. I think this is something that is very important to our community. You are at least showing an interest in who's going to be running your city, and I appreciate that. I'm in kind of a unique position sitting here tonight. I think I'm the only person who has ever been a city commissioner, then the mayor, and now running for a commissioner again. I decided not to run for mayor, but it was a very tough decision to make. I found this position to be very rewarding and fulfilling. However, the position as mayor takes a lot of my time and commitment. I think you as the citizens deserve that time and commitment, and I've tried to give you what you deserve. I am now at a point in my life that I would like to redirect some of my energy and time to other pursuits, such as spending time with my grandsons, my elderly mother, doing some traveling with my wife, and possibly even trying to develop something called a hobby. I've heard about that, but I don't know how to do that yet. By the way, I want to tell you, my wife, if we don't have time for the rest of this, my wife did not want me to run for commissioner. She didn't want me to run for mayor, and now she doesn't want me not to run for mayor because she's afraid I won't be happy. So anyway, however, I do wish to completely give, I don't wish to give up public service, and I promise that if I am re-elected or elected to this position, I will commit whatever time necessary to serve you as commissioner. Can I get these? Pardon? While serving in the past as commissioner and now as mayor, I have tried to serve you with integrity and to the best of my ability. If you elect me as commissioner, I promise to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And that concludes our Effingham City Council candidate forum. I want to thank each of the candidates for coming out this evening. And more importantly, thank you for giving up your time to run for office, and if elected, thank you for representing the city of Effingham. Thank you to all those in the crowd who have gathered for this forum. We do have, as you know the schedule, another forum coming your way in about 15 minutes. I'd like to thank our media panel. For those listening online, live online, we have Greg Sapp, Jeff Long, Tom Jameson, and Herb Meeker asking the questions for tonight's forum. And we'll be back in 15 minutes. If you did not catch or want to see this live online, you can get it on vxradio.com as well as effinghamradio.com. They tell us those will be up in just a few days, so you can catch a rebroadcast of this. We'll be back with you in about 15 minutes. Does that work with all of our media production folks? Fantastic. The word is we'll be back in 15 minutes. If you're listening online, please come back and join us.